Hi, and welcome to my video on why I left Arch. I think a really important factor when you're choosing a Linux distribution is going to be the community in general. If you have questions and you need to ask on the forums, if you have questions and you choose to ask on IRC, um, the community of your distro is going to be the ones answering, helping, kind of guiding you through solutions. And that in itself is the main reason I've left Arch. I used Arch for a number of years. I have put up a few packages on the AUR. I've tried to offer help in the IRCs and the forums. And one of the main things I've noticed is that it's not a newbie friendly distro for less reasons than the distro's hard to install. It's not overwhelmingly hard. It's pretty easy, and with a little bit of help, if you're struggling, you can easily get it installed. My biggest issue was the attitude of the community, and I think that's one of the reasons that makes it not a newbie friendly distro. There's a great mentality with Arch about reading the wiki and doing it yourself. It's a do it yourself distro. The wiki has very good documentation, but it can be confusing. Uh, Also, if somebody, we've talked about this with a couple of friends of mine from different communities and different organizations, that if you have issues reading, or if you have somebody brought up dyslexia, some other stuff where things just don't make sense the first handful of times you read them, and you were to ask on the Arch forums, you'd get accosted isn't the right word, but you wouldn't be treated with much respect, and you likely would be belittled a little bit in my experience and things I've seen. I've definitely watched people walk in and ask a question, and I jokingly say to people, like, if you want self-esteem issues, install Arch, because you go into the forums, and even if you know what you're saying, even if you go into the IRC and you know what you're saying, you're going to have a couple of people who are going to tell you that you're an idiot, just for asking a straightforward question, and then ask you what your question is. I've had that happen to me myself, where I've asked if an application exists and I'm told that I have no clue what I'm talking about, and then asked what was my question. So I struggle with that factor of a community that really isn't welcoming. There's a difference between being hand holding and being welcoming, and I find Arch is neither. And the first you can kind of do without in a do-it-yourself distro. You don't have to guide everybody through every little step. But the idea of being just rude to new members, that was a major turnoff for me. It's a very cliquey distro. There's a very small group of people that are, quote unquote, the ones who know what they're doing, and everybody else is just garbage. And I think for me that's a point where, if you want to build a distro and have it be for your group of people, cool. But once you put it up and it's online and everybody can grab it, treat everybody with a little common decency. So enough of it being a rant about Arch. Um, as for a distribution, it's great. Uh, there's a lot of packages in the AUR. There's a lot of stuff in their official repos. So if you are somebody who just avoids forums and IRCs, and you're just going to struggle with the wiki and ask some other person some other way how to do something, or just figure it out yourself, it's actually a great distro. But I think it only takes 3 or 4 years with a sour community to just make you not want to use it. What it did leave me to do, was look into a couple of distros, and I've tried things like Slackware way back. Some recent ones I tried were Ubuntu, just to see if it was going to work for what I wanted, and then I keep going back to Arch. Uh, More recently, I've switched over to OpenSUSE. It's the kind of two options. You have your Tumbleweed and your Leap. Which the Leap is your solid distribution. It gets an upgrade every so many months, and Tumbleweed is your rolling release, which is coming from March. Tumbleweed is a nice thing for me. I was able to install a very minimal X window thing. I think it came with like Ice Window Manager, and I could just remove that and put on Awesome, set up my configs, and go from there. So the nice thing about OpenSUSE is that there's plenty of packages there for my liking, and everything else I couldn't find, I was able to just sort of pull from a few other places or install manually from source code. It wasn't overwhelmingly complicated. And for a lot of the stuff a user is going to use, it's going to be in the repos. They typically come with, I believe it's KDE and GNOME. And so people can kind of take a pick of what desktop they want to use. Again, was kind of happy that there was a generic X Windows setup, and I could put on exactly what I want, because I don't use a sane desktop. I don't prefer a sane desktop. I like it to be what I like it to be. So having been off Arch for about 4 days, I've kind of been able to give OpenSUSE a little bit of a look over and decide that I'll probably stay here for a bit. It does have pretty good. The SUSE Prime is kind of nice for my NVIDIA drivers on my laptop. The only real issue I ran into was something with X Backlight, and that was as simple as going to GitHub and grabbing Light, which is actually my preferred backlight controller, and using that, and then I have acceptable backlight working. If you're looking to get away from Arch, which maybe if you found this video is sort of what you're looking at, I would really say to kind of get on and look at different communities. Like I said, I think the community is the most important factor of your distro, besides just its functionality, because those are the people who are going to be there to support any questions you have. Or it's also going to be the place where if you know what you're doing, you're going to be able to provide support. And is that an environment you want to be a part of? And I think that sometimes it takes a while to check out the communities. So I'm always a fan of looking at sort of the larger picture of what you're using. And if you have any questions about leaving Arch or using Arch, or what I found with OpenSUSE, just leave some comments below or something. And if you have other distributions that you've found that work for you after leaving any distro, or reasons for leaving distros, feel free to leave those in the comments. I think it's not bad to have a little bit of a table discussion about where you're coming from and why, so that users may find what works for them.